Hello, Britt here to bring you day 5 of my 13 cards of Halloween card series. Again, I am using the Spooky collection from Carta Bella, which is 2014. It has really iconic prints on the front and some nice, more plain prints on the back. I'm using a Spellbinders embossing folder. They're all double-sided and really awesome. And a piece of cardstock from American Crafts and some very old embellishments from the girls' papery Toil and Trouble. First, I am going to, again, as I have done in a previous video, just go through very quickly how to make a portrait style 5x7 card. But this time, after I make my 5x7 portrait style card, I'm going to make some adjustments to it so that it actually becomes a shaped card. So as I explained in a previous video, you cut 2 strips of paper from a 12 by 12 that measure 5 inches across by 12 inches up and down, and then you take one of those strips and you cut it to 5 by 7. Then you take the other 12 by 5 and you score it at 7 inches. When you fold over the long strip, you get a 5 by 7 panel with about a 5 by 5 overhang on the opposite side. So you take your adhesive, you cover that short end of the card, and then you take your 5 by 7 panel that you cut originally and you lay it over the short end of the card fold. And when you attach those two together, you have a 5 by 7 totally pretty streamlined portrait style card. Now I am going to turn this regular portrait style 5 by 7 into a shaped card, and the shape is going to be a banner. Over at Memorable Seasons this past month, we've been having card challenges instead of the normal scrapbooking challenges, and one of the design team issued a banner challenge, and so I thought I would take it to an extreme and go ahead and make an entire card that was just basically based on how much I could use banners. So I went ahead and I took some of this very light orange, kind of metallic-y cardstock that I had from American Crafts. I honestly do not know if it is available anymore, but I know that cardstock like this is still available lots of places. It's just sort of a pearlescent light orange color. So I'm going to I'm using this this straight edge, which is an old drafting tool of my dad's that he gave me when I told him I needed a straight edge. It has no marks on it, no nothing. It's just a square on one end. It's just like a triangle, but it doesn't have any measurements, and it's as great as a straight edge. It's like older than time, I think. But I go ahead and I cut down the mat to the same shape as the card, but slightly smaller, just about a ½ inch smaller all the way around. And then I'm going to use this embossing folder, Spellbinders embossing folder, to put a sort of a chevron dot on pattern on this mat. Now it doesn't exactly match the collection, just as this light kind of creamy orange cardstock color. So I'm taking my favorite black ink, Heidi Swap ink, and I am going over the whole thing. Now I left it on the embossing folder so that way I wouldn't get too much of the ink down in between the design and you would still clearly be able to see the design. So I'm attaching my mat to the front of the card, and it fits pretty perfectly. It has a little room at the top, but actually when I end up finishing the card, that seems to not be a problem because of the way that the rest of the card is designed. Now I have these spooky papers as part of my kit for the Memorable Seasons October challenges over at the Foreman store. I will link to that below. And I haven't used a fair few because we've been doing cards. I have several of these big 12 by 12 patterns that I haven't used yet. So that was my other motivation to doing this banner card, because I would be able to sort of do as I'm doing now and cut off a bunch of strips and use the backs and fronts of these different papers to kind of show off the potential of the patterns from this collection to be put all together on the same project. So I am just going through and cutting down all of my strips into the sizes and banner shapes that I'm wanting for the card, and I decide that I'm just going to basically use the card itself as the largest focal image, and I'm going to build all of these smaller banners on top of it so that the whole thing looks like a complete picture instead of just a bunch of elements or an image or something like that on top of a square card. When you have a little chevron type paper like that, or arrow paper, and you're going to cut it into a banner, make sure you pay attention to the way that the arrows are going, and it basically will just tell you where to cut it, and it will look really cool, like it's pointing up, and give your whole design a little bit of direction. So I'm using these super old embellishments from a Girls Papery collection, Toil and Trouble. I think somewhere in the 2008 to 2009 years is when it came out, but I felt okay using them because, as you will see in the closer up pictures of this card, those embellishments would be extremely easy to manufacture yourself with other papers, with bits of paper left over from the cards you make with this collection or whatever collection that you're using for Halloween. But since they were pre-made for me and it makes the video a little shorter, I just decided to use them because I had them. Another thing about my pretty much everyday crafting is that I do a lot of inking around the edges. Now, I know some people don't really love that, but I will say, if you're not a person who does the inking all the time, it would still be a good idea to do the inking on projects like this, or especially with seasonal papers that are so color centric or color identifiable, because basically to make it look like a Halloween collection and still give it some differentiation between just a regular collection that may or may not have little skulls on it. Like, you could do a collection that was pirates and it would still have skull and crossbones, but it wouldn't necessarily be Halloween. So to make things look Halloween, you usually have to use Halloween colors, right, in designing a collection. Well, if you're making one project using all the same colors, it's sometimes hard to get some contrast and allow your eye to see what's really going on. A good way to avoid that problem is by doing what I did here and inking around the edges of especially all of the elements that will be closely together that have very little color contrast. It will help add an extra shadow. Our eyes will see that those dark marks around the outside of the elements as shadows. And so we see the differentiation between things that are the same color, even though there's not a lot of contrast. It will give extra contrast to add that little shadow. So even if you're not an inker, if you're using like Christmas collections that are red and green and nothing else, or Halloween collections that are basically black and cream and orange and nothing else, it's still a good idea just to do those things. And then when you're using stuff with a lot of contrast, you don't have to. Now, I used this strip of sticker border from the Spooky Collection sticker sheet. I had to cut it down a little bit, but I thought it put a very nice element just to tie everything together and help make the card look like it had an anchor where all of the different elements were being held on. We all know that adhesive is holding those on, but to the eye, it makes it look like that little banner is holding all of those other banners up. So that is my finished card. Here's some close-up shots. I have had life get in the way of this video series. hardcore, but I'm going to try to finish. It will be a feat, but I'm going to try. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye-bye.